We are in the safest time in history, yet anxiety and depression are at an all-time high. How is it possible to have more resources and opportunities than ever before, have less poverty and violence than at any point in history, and still believe our lives are worse off than it's ever been? In this video, we're going to look at the psychology and find out why our life isn't quite as bad as we think it is. Recession, war, climate change. There's new evidence every day as to why the world is not in the best shape right now. And if I were advocating for the devil, that is the exact argument I'd make to prove why life is not worth living.
August 15th marked 2 years since the Taliban took over Afghanistan, with women's rights all but being non-existent. In 2022 alone, the United States police have killed at least 100 people a month. And the 2023 Canadian wildfires, you know, the thing that turned New York into Mars for a week, are still prevalent at the time of me recording this.
Now, no doubt that these are important issues that plague the world today, and they were huge news when they broke the first time. But here's my question. When was the last time you actually thought about them?
If your first thought after hearing that was, oh yeah, I remember that, it did not affect your life in the slightest.
Something's telling me that if you were actually affected by the Taliban, you probably would not have needed a reminder.
And this leads me to my first point as to why we think our life is worse off than it is. Our perspective on life is clouded by the news. The media is the Bible of the fearful. John Gordon, author.
Stop me if this sounds familiar.
It's a Monday morning in September. Your phone alarm rings, and you turn your head to your nightstand to see that it's 6 a.m. You know it takes you an hour to head to school, and your first class is at 8, so you decide it's still worth laying in bed for a few minutes to catch up on text notifications and what's new on social media. You check out what's new on YouTube, on Facebook. You catch a meme here and there, and then on Instagram, you catch a news article that says, a convicted murderer escapes from Pennsylvania prison. You take note, then decide it's time to roll out of bed for breakfast. The sizzling aroma of bacon and scrambled eggs your mom made swirl in your nostrils as you run down the stairs. The TV already turned on to the news channel she was watching at the time. The headlines flash on screen as a news anchor projects. 80-year-old executed by gunman on bike. Oil prices hit a 10-month high on Friday and ever increasing. Child death and deadly fentanyl exposure at Bronx daycare. You're disturbed, but it's already 6:45, so you brush it off as you grab your things to head out the door. As you bend down to lace up your white Air Force Ones, you overhear your mom and her best friend on the phone. Dear God, an 80-year-old murdered just around the corner from us? This world is in shambles. What type of a sick person would put fentanyl in a daycare? Oh boy, surprise, surprise, gas is getting more expensive. How can we even afford to live? On your commute to school, you spend the entire bus ride scrolling through Instagram, through Facebook and TikTok, and through the slew of memes and posts, there are countless news articles and alerts that squeeze in, depicting the upcoming presidential debate, the newest police brutality case, child abduction, etc., etc., etc.
By your 8 a.m. algebra class, you can't even think about what the teacher is saying, and your mood is already down. You ask yourself, like, damn, why do I feel so depressed all of a sudden? And that right there, that example, is the reality for most people in today's world, especially in Gen Z. By the time you finish your eggs, you've already gotten a murder, a local robbery, and an economic downpour under your belt, and your day literally has not even started yet. You gave your brain a mega dose of negative. And truth is, it's not entirely your fault.
In psychology, it's a concept called mean world syndrome, which is a proposed cognitive bias wherein people may perceive the world to be more dangerous than it actually is due to a long-term, moderate, or heavy exposure of violence-related content in mass media. Professor George Gerbner conducted a study in 1968 of households to find the correlation between the amount of television watched per day and the amount of fear, anxiety, and pessimistic views someone holds of the world.
And unfortunately, the facts aren't too surprising.
In the late 1960s, people deemed as heavy viewers, is 4 more hours of television watched per day, experienced significantly more shyness, loneliness, and depression than those who barely watched or did not watch television at all. He went so far as to find out that by the time a child finishes elementary school, they would have seen about 8,000 murders and 200,000 violent acts by the time they're 18 years old.
Keep in mind that this is the 1960s, where TV, newspapers, and radio were basically the only way you can get new information at the time. Now, what does this mean for us in 2023 in a world bombarded with digital outlets lying for our attention?
Simply put, The answer is to understand that majority of what we watch on the news is either completely outside of our control or will never affect us personally, so we never need to watch it. A mentor of mine once told me, I've never seen someone change the world by watching the most news, but I have seen the news change them.
Simply knowing that the problem exists doesn't mean that you personally have the power to change it, nor should you feel obligated to.
Now, that's easier said than done, of course, but at what point in time has overthinking or stressing over a global problem ever solved it? Speaking rationally, what could you do as an individual to eradicate Taliban rule at this very moment? Or stop the Ukraine war effective immediately? Or put a halt to climate change?
Now, here's a story about how I finally realized this myself.
2020 was an interesting year for all of us, and there's no argument there. My bank teller job was on a hiatus for a few months, and like the other 7 billion people on the planet, I was sat at home with plenty of time and plenty of internet. During the height of the George Floyd protest, watching the news was like putting your emotions on a slot machine. You could be furious, sad, disappointed, or disgusted all within the span of a few minutes. Doom scrolling through all my negative feeds, it seemed like there was a new police brutality incident every week. Every time a video of someone getting tased, shot, choked, or brutalized by law enforcement popped up, I felt sick to my stomach, but like an addict chasing his next fix, something kept gnawing at me to click the play button. I had to watch it. It was honestly bizarre. It was like there was a fear that I'd miss out on something important if I didn't subject myself to that content. Then one day that summer, another major news broke out about another police brutality that ended in a killing. I saw the post and Instagram put that sensitive content blur over it where I'd actually have to click see post. I remember being sat on my couch and my finger inching towards the screen. Then all of a sudden, something snapped inside of me. My finger stopped literally centimeters before I touched my phone. And I said to myself, why exactly do I need to watch this?
And no disrespect to the victim and everyone who was affected. To this day, I've never clicked on the article, and I literally don't even remember this specific event I'm referring to.
But then I asked myself 2 questions. Number 1, will subjecting myself to this change what has happened? Or number 2, do I personally have any desire to change this specific thing?
But if I were to be honest with myself, the answer to both questions was a big fat no. And it's okay if you feel the same.
We all have our own lives and our own responsibilities to take care of.
And it's okay to not take the world's problems and putting on our own shoulders.
It's okay to acknowledge that a problem exists and help, if possible, from afar, and not subject yourself to it every day.
And that's when I decided to stop watching the news. My personal philosophy is, if anything is that important, we're gonna find out about it regardless. Even Amish people knew about COVID-19. There's no way you could have went through the last 3 years without knowing about the pandemic. That does beg the question though, why do we feel such a pull to watch negative content, although we know it will only lead to bad emotions?
There's a rabbit hole of reasons, but number 1 is our innate social desire to not be left out of the know. Our ancestral brain thrived on the shared information of the group, and back then, being left out literally could have meant death. Which perfectly leads to my second point. Your brain is literally designed to believe things are worse than they actually are. Here, we're going to discuss 2 different cognitive biases, negativity bias and declinism. Negativity bias, also known as positive-negative asymmetry, is our tendency to fixate and dwell on negative stimuli more than positive ones. Tracing back to our primitive days of hunting and gathering, our brains needed to register threats to avoid danger and increase our chance of survival. Individuals who were more in tune to danger or negative stimuli stayed alive longer and passed on their genes. Back then, focusing on the negative was much needed to avoid getting mauled by lions or impaled by wildebeest. Today, not so much.
Stop me if this hits too close to home. You've been in a solid relationship with the love of your life for years, and for all you know, they could have walked on water. You get into one bad argument, and then every single thing pisses you off. The day before, you could have cared less about them chewing with their mouth open or leaving the toothpaste cap off, but now everything gets you mad.
By all accounts, you're having a great day. Your mood is up, you accomplished everything on your to-do list, and maybe even gotten a promotion at your job. Then all of a sudden your friend makes a passing comment about how stupid your haircut looks, and now that's what you think about for the next 2 days. As if all the positive things that happened earlier was irrelevant.
You were hanging out with the homies, you had a great day with your bros, and as you're saying your goodbyes, you go for a handshake, he goes for a fist bump, And now for the rest of the night, you're thinking about how awkward that one interaction was, and not even think about the great day you just had. There are 1,440 minutes in a single day. And isn't it crazy how we allow one bad minute rob us of the other 1,439? Which is of course why negative news is so appealing to us, and why it takes us extra effort for us to turn away from it. And the media thrives on it. And that's negativity bias in a nutshell. Going a step further,
Now, declinism is the tendency to see the past in an overly positive light and view your present and future in an overly negative light, leading us to believe that things are worse off than they used to be. For example, have you ever noticed that every generation thinks that the generation after them sucks? This generation is too soft. Remember when we can make a joke and people wouldn't get offended? Remember when people weren't lazy? Baby boomers said the same about Gen X. Gen X said the same about millennials. Millennials are saying the same about Gen Z, and everyone will say the same about Gen Alpha. How is it possible that every generation has the same thing to say about the following generation? Which leads to believe that there must be only one of two scenarios happening. Either number one, the world truly is declining and we're just in this perpetual state of downward spiral, or everyone is a victim of their own biases. Here's a list of just a few of them if you want to pause and research each term yourself.
great, now we have a better understanding of our own biases, how they betray us, and why our own society/life is better now than it was at any point in history.
But what does that mean for you? Unfortunately, awareness of our biases alone doesn't stop them from happening. With all the negative that is legitimately happening in the world, in a time where it seems almost impossible to avoid the media besides becoming a hermit, how do we begin to have a better outlook on life? Now, there are tons of research already available to help you combat this, which I'll link in the description to help you out. But I can sum it all up into one thing that's really helped me refocus back on reality. What is the one thing that you possess in your life right now that if it was taken away from you, life would lose meaning? People in the self-improvement space always speak on making a list of all the things that you're grateful for in life, which is very accurate advice that does help. In addition to that, I believe we could take it just a step further. Now, let's say you found the genie and he said to you, he says, "I'll give you one wish where you can get anything you want." And you go, "That doesn't seem possible. Are you serious?" But he goes, "But you'd have to give up the one thing that's most important to you in life that gives your life the most meaning." What's that one thing in your life where your answer would be, "No thanks"? For most people, that could be family or their relationship with God. It could be their work that they find the most meaning in, or their health, or it could be how you choose to help others, your closest friends in your life, or the fact that you have the chance to wake up another morning and give yourself another shot at life. The reason why that question is so pivotal is because it forces you to take a deeper look at your values. And as human beings, we're way more motivated by preventing a loss than we are to receive a gain. Then you figure out what's the second most important thing in life you possess now that gives you meaning, then the third, and then so on and so on. Psychology suggests to challenge the way we think whenever you feel like life isn't going your way or going bad. Ask yourself, is this accurate? Or what positive stories are there that challenge what I believe? Now, by doing this, amongst other things, I believe by cutting out as much negative influence as possible, by being aware of the biases we have and switching our focus back on the most positive things we have in our life, we'll realize that our life isn't quite as bad as we think it is. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you found any type of value, please consider leaving a like and a comment. That'll let me know that this is something that you guys want to see more of in the future. And it'll definitely push this content out to more people who would find more value in it in themselves as well. And so also subscribe if you don't want to miss a future upload. And if nothing else, I'll see you guys in the next one.